Hello and welcome to episode 1200 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, July 28th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, I just said it was 1200
Yeah,
right
you
before you hit
literally
it,
said it. Yeah.
and I still almost said 11 something. How's it going, man? It's good to see you.
Clearly, the trade deadline has you shook. Like
Clearly.
you are afraid of being traded. You don't want to be traded. You've got a house where you're at. Like you don't want to be sent over to ESPN. You know, you want to stay at Fangraphs.
The turmoil over there right now.
Yeah.
We can't be having that. Yeah, the trade deadline is upon us. There's rumors flying everywhere. I heard Fangraphs was thinking about picking, Sayers back up as a veteran pickup. Clubhouse really didn't respond well to it. Said, "Who's that guy? Never heard of him," type deal. So there's some stuff going on.
But you got to do what you got to do when you're competing for a championship, as we always are at Fangraphs.
Exactly. So, if we got to bring Eno in, maybe just bring him in off the bench. Maybe a couple articles on the front page, a couple on the Fangraphs side. If he can deliver in the clutch, especially during the playoffs, that could bring us the title. We do have some trades. We're getting a little bit of the early deadline going with some interesting teams involved with what they're doing. We'll also play a little 3 up, 3 down with some key hitters, and then recommend some 2-start guys that might have some streaming viability in a range of deep to shallow formats. Because I got an interesting range of guys, including your buddy, man, your favorite left-hander from the NL East that we've probably visited about 15 times on the show. He's back in again because it's a really spicy 2-step. But we'll get to that later. Let's talk some trades that have already happened. Lucas Giolito to the Angels in a really interesting deal. He's going to go with Reynaldo Lopez too, but he's not a fantasy factor. That's just a little pickup for them. By the way, these two have to be traded together forever. Obviously they got to the White Sox together from the Nationals. Would love to see them traded a third time at some point, because obviously they could split up next year. Giolito's a free agent. But I really do like this deal. Giolito to the Angels for a couple prospects, Kai Busch and Edgar Caro. You can talk about them in a moment if they have any dynasty value, but let's focus on Giolito. We kind of knew he'd be traded, right? We expect Lance Lynn to go as well. Cease is more of a toss-up because he's got plenty of team control. We knew Giolito was going to go. What do you think of this landing spot with the Angels?
I think it's a pretty lateral move for the most part with the Angels. Park isn't the best. It's a tough division. It's a much tougher division. So it kind of equals out the change in offensive profile that might get him win probability. So I think it's pretty lateral. I don't think it hurts him necessarily. I don't think it really helps him that much either. So it's just interesting to see the Angels be buyers at the deadline.
Now, I tell you what, I didn't want to make the same mistake I did during the Soto sweepstakes, where I really didn't see it happening, and then it did, and I was like, wow, okay, awesome. I mean, it's a fun move. Let's analyze it and all that. I've been kind of feeling similarly about Ohtani, but again, didn't want to make that same mistake of shutting it down, saying, no, it's not going to happen, only to watch it happen. But I was leaning pretty heavily no. I'm just like, they've put themselves in this corner at this point where they can't really tear down, nor can they even retool, where they just trade off an Ohtani and try to keep it going next year. They've painted themselves into this corner. It's not a terrible corner to have Ohtani and Trout and some struggles. They have to keep fighting. And so I'm glad that they took Ohtani off the table. They bring in Giolito. I hope they make another move or two, another maybe, mid-tier-ish type move, like a Jeimer Candelario type of player. Doesn't have to necessarily be him, but somebody like that, maybe over at first or third, something else. But I want to see them pushing. And you mentioned Giolito's big addition here is the win probability. I told you offline before we started how much I would just kill for a W. So as somebody with Giolito, I will say that even though everything else is probably neutral or maybe even a little worse, as far as the division and all that, I'll take the win probability help all day. I think that's a big addition for Giolito, and so that alone makes the trade a W for me and his fantasy prospects.
Yeah, I mean, you got to love that. I think he's starting today, right?
Yes. Now, question on that one. I said this in the SP chart today, that I wouldn't blame anybody for maybe sitting on this first start with Giolito transitioning to his new club. It's been a whirlwind. It's at Toronto. Where do you stand on Giolito today? He's been a must start for a while. are you firmly leaving him in all of your lineups? Or are you considering maybe like, let me just get one under his belt and then we'll see Giolito next week home to Seattle? What do you think about today's start specifically?
I think if you're win seeking, you go with it. I mean, like there's just
I've already got him in for the weekly, so
yeah. If you're trying to protect your ratios in like a 10, I can understand it. But I think in 12s and 15s, you're probably just rolling with it and just hoping that Toronto's bats don't come alive on him. But yeah, I think he's. Oh man, yeah. It's. I mean, it's a really really tough start, and it's first time in a new uniform. You never know how someone's going to respond to that. So
at least. I'm actually somewhat hardened by the fact that Giolito will face Toronto in Toronto, because it's not in front of your new fans or everything. You don't have to try to go out and you never know how guys are going to react to this stuff, right? So I don't want to impress too many things upon Giolito. I don't know him, but I'm with you. 10s, because I gave him the 2Xs, 12 and 15X for Giolito, pretty much starting him there. But in 10s, if you wanted to take a break and say, hey, I'm just going to put him on the bench. Let's see how this transition to the Angels goes, and then we'll catch up with him next week. I could totally see that if you want to pass against Toronto in Toronto. Yep. The interesting thing here, a little bit, at least in terms of like name value, was Jared Walsh was DFA'd because they had to bring in both guys. Are we done with Jared Walsh just kind of as a player, really? Like, is he kind of cooked? Because it's been a while now. 22, 23 are both washouts. He's already going to be 30. He was a late bloomer as is. He's dealing with some pretty tough injuries. Like, isn't there some neurological stuff as well, like concussions? And am I wrong on that?
I think there was like vertigo or something like that
perhaps,
at some point. But I mean,
I don't know if vertigo's neurological, so pardon me if I'm speaking out of turn.
Yeah, but I mean, this was the concern we had with him coming in here is he had thoracic outlet surgery, and we had no idea like what the recovery was going to be like for a hitter. We've seen it for a pitcher. We've seen the vast majority of pitchers just not be able to return from it or not be the guy. Like the only guy that has returned from thoracic outlet surgery and ended up being good is Alex Cobb. So
it's a rough track record for TLS.
Yeah. So now we have a little bit more track record, but I mean, he could have been washed before that. And we just didn't know it. I mean, he's really, really struggled the last few years. So I think at this point he's probably done, but if he has a resurgence one year as like a platoon hitter, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe it's just one of those things where you need extra years to come back. But at this point, he's what is he, in his early 30s? Like he's probably done.
That's the thing. I hope I'm wrong. I like Jared Walsh. I was in on his initial breakthrough, so that was cool. Somebody that I kind of bought in on his small sample, and it worked. But I'm having a hard time being super optimistic about where things are with him right now. And so as such, I think you don't have to hold him in really any league format, right? Even like when it comes to a dynasty, if you have a prospect of moderate interest that you're like, hey, I kind of like this guy, you can cut your Jared Walsh for him anywhere where he might be rostered.
As far as the prospects go, this is not a light return. Like when you're trading a reliever and a starting pitcher on their or on his last year of his deal,
rental situations.
To get two guys who are in the top 10 of the Angels farm system is pretty darn good of a return. So
so let me ask you real quick though on that. When you're talking top 10, and I remember this a lot at being a Tigers fan, because they would trade guys that were like top 10 in their system. You have to account for system quality though, too, right? And doesn't that mitigate it at least a little bit in terms of...
A little bit, but Curo is a top 50, top 100 prospect.
Yes, he's a top 100 guy. Yeah. Yep, I think he was like 61. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you on that though, with respect to the Angels, it is a good return, I think, and I agree that the White Sox did well here with Bush and Caro. Is it easier for you to give Caro as the Angels with the development of Ohapi looking like he might become your next decade catcher? Absolutely.
But I mean, at the same time, like, good catchers is not an easy thing to find.
Always valuable.
When teams are rolling out Austin Hedges and Jacob Stallings, to trade away a catcher like Caro who can he's not great behind the plate, but he's a good offensive bat. Like that says a lot about where the Angels are at now. Like you said, Ohapi is, he's arrived. He's going to be back at some point, right? Because I think he's still in the IL.
Yes, yeah, and might be able to work his way back at some point this year.
But Caro, like he's got pop. He's got a pretty decent hit tool. I think he's going to be able to stay behind the plate. So it's a nice little get for the White Sox.
Yeah, good move by them. Let me ask you on Caro. It seems inevitable that automatic balls and strikes are coming. So does that help somebody like Caro quite a bit, that he doesn't have to be a great framer because that's going to be kind of taken out? And if he is a good bat, I don't know what his arm status is like, but if he has a decent arm, isn't that catcher going to kind of come in vogue as we move toward the automated balls and strikes, which again, I think is a matter of if, not when. Like it's coming. So what do you think about that with respect to somebody like Caro and other catchers like that maybe aren't the best framers?
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to, and I think you're already seeing less of an emphasis coming up from the minor leagues on guys who are really great framers. Like it's not as big of a deal because there's already automatic balls and strikes in the minor leagues, and they're expecting. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's added next season. It's like we're going to automatic balls and strikes. We finally are at that point. So I think that's going to be less of an emphasis. Guys like, Tyler Stevenson, who, are not very good framers, are going to be a lot more valuable if they've got a bat. And I think Caro falls in kind of that pot of type of catchers. So, it'll be interesting to see how that changes minor league, advancement for catchers, because catchers have always been slow roasted because they have to learn how to hit, but also learn how to call a game and learn how to frame. And, if you take one of those things out, do catchers start to advance a little bit more quickly, which would change how we kind of value them in Dynasty.
For sure, because I'm kind of allergic to rookie catchers in general, because of how long it can take them to come together. There's exceptions, I was pretty in on Adley off rip, but yeah, I totally get that. And so we'll see what happens with Edgar Caro in the coming years, but good move. I think it's a win-win deal, like that the Angels are pushing. I think the White Sox did well on their return here. Let's talk about a division mate of the White Sox, the Cleveland Guardians. They made a big move. This was an interesting challenge trade, kind of your trash for mine. Can you sparkle up that piece of trash? Maybe I can sparkle up this one. Amed Rosario for Noah Syndergaard, right? These are two prominent names. One-time teammates. Did they play together in New York at all? I mean, obviously they're both from the Mets.
Yeah.
So one-time teammates traded for each other here. This situation where Cleveland has middle infielders. Rosario's dreadful at short. So even though he's been hitting the last couple months pretty decently, like the Amed Rosario that we're used to, he adds nothing at shortstop. He's a major negative there defensively. And then Thor, we've seen he's had a nightmare season. And look, y'all know how much I love Thor. I talk about it every time we bring him up, that I root for him, and I was hoping the Dodgers could fix him. I don't think the Guardians can, but if he's going to go anywhere else that isn't the Dodgers, I probably would have picked the Guardians or the Rays. So it's another great pitching organization. Obviously, if they can't fix him, I think he should be mandated to retire, because, like, look, the Dodgers and Guardians tried, and you still have a 7 ERA. We're forcing you to hang him up. I think that probably should be the case. But let's start with Rosario, because that's a lot more fantasy relevant. He's going to go out there to the Dodgers, get into the mix. I think his playing time goes down for sure because he is such a bad defender. And they also brought in Kike Hernandez, who we'll talk about in a moment. In fact, I'll move that up because we'll talk about that on the heels of this. But is Amed Rosario, where is he a hold, if anywhere, with this trade?
I mean, I think anywhere you were holding him, you're still holding him. Okay. I don't think his playing time lessens that much. I think he's going to play fairly regularly.
You think they're going to commit to him as that dreadful shortstop? Here's what I'm concerned about. A lot of 6-inning games. He might get starts, play for 6, and Rojas comes in and plays the last 3.
Yeah, I think they could do that. I mean, that's what they were doing kind of in Cleveland. So, where he was getting pulled late in games as a defensive for a defensive replacement. So, I mean, it's a better park to hit in. It's a better offense around him, I think this is a plus for him. And maybe they think
he was not getting replaced very often, by the way. He's on my fantasy team, so I mean, at times, but they were letting him play. I think because Rosario was hitting well, too.
Yeah.
You have to keep that in mind. Over those last 40 games, 310, 346, 431 with a couple homers and a steal. So, like, his bat was getting back on track, so I think they were dealing with the garbage defense at short from Rosario.
Yeah, I mean, they do have Rojas, who is a premium defender at shortstop, so I could see it. I mean, I don't think the move hurts him that much in terms of how many at bats he's going to lose or anything like that.
I hope you're right.
Yeah,
I'm worried you're not.
That could be. It's just a weird trade. Like, neither team needed this. Like, I know, like for the Dodgers,
but neither team needed the guy they traded either.
Yeah.
So if you saw a better need, it made some sense to me. Right, like we'll talk about Gabriel Arias in a moment.
I think it makes less sense to me from Cleveland's perspective. Like, I know they wanted to trade Rosario, but like picking up, like I would have rather seen pick up a bunch of or a couple of A-ball guys or something like that. Like,
I bet
getting Thor, probably not. Like,
Rosario's a rental. Don't forget, Rosario's been around for a while, so I don't think you're
getting. And they're not paying anything on Syndergaard, right? Because I think the Dodgers are eating all of Syndergaard's contract. But like Syndergaard doesn't make that team better at all. Like,
I think the point was that Rosario wasn't either. So take an arm, and if they see anything in him, I don't know. I don't know if they see anything in him. I'm just saying, if they saw a modicum of potential there where they think they can tweak something, I don't know. I just think Rosario wasn't moving the bottom line.
Getting DFA'd at some point. Like,
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't in the slightest. I really wouldn't. Because I mean, he's been dreadful this year, and again, if the Dodgers can't fix you, can really anybody? Maybe the Guardians can. They're wonderful at pitching as well. So I think I get the deal a little bit more than you do in terms of, like, I see how each team can do this because they didn't need the other guy, and particularly with Cleveland, you mentioned that you see it less from their standpoint. I see it more because Gabriel Arias is a premium defensive shortstop, and so just getting him in, even if the bat isn't really there, which is probably not going to be. He does have 4 homers and a steal this year, but he's 1 for 4 on the bases. He's going to be a great defender. I think this could help their pitchers, overall, even though they're already pretty good in Cleveland. So I think this is an upgrade with Arias. Do you like Arias anywhere like an AL only or like a 18-plus type team mixer? Is there any value there? Like I said, he's been dreadful at the dish this year in 171 plate appearances, 77 WRC plus. But Gabriel Arias, the new Cleveland shortstop, what do you think?
No, like I guess an AL only where like every at bat matters. I guess he makes a little bit of sense, probably as a reserve player, but outside of that, like I just don't think he's got enough offensive capabilities. I think we're boring.
Okay, no, I think that's totally fine with regards to Gabriel Arias on this trade. I'm not sure that he adds a whole lot, but I'm just wondering if you thought there was anything there. And let's go. I don't even want to pretend that Thor might have some value. We can revisit him.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
If he crops up and starts doing something, we'll revisit it there. So let's go to the Enrique Hernández deal because Boston reunited Kike Hernandez into LA. Does he get into this shortstop mix at all? Because he might be a bad defender there, but so is Rosario is like the worst. So I'm curious if they think they can bring in Rosario and he can play some short, why wouldn't Kike be in the mix too?
Because, I mean, what Kike does is hit lefties, and Rosario's better at hitting lefties, or at least he has been this year. So I think Kike is a super utility guy. I think he plugs holes for the Dodgers. I think they're hoping to reclaim some of the past glory they had with him prior to him signing that contract.
Shortstop's a hole, by the way. Shortstop's one of those holes.
But, I mean, they've got now, like, 3 of their bench bats can play shortstop. So, I think Kike and Chris Taylor are going to be those guys that give everybody days off. So, like, they're going to play, at pretty much every single position on that team in order to give guys days off. So, and I also think the Dodgers are going to add
I was about to ask, are they done?
No, they're clearly not done. I mean, they've been tied to just about every single major guy on the block. Well, the rumor we saw last night floating around was they were in discussions with the Cardinals on Arenado.
Yep, that's the big one.
Hey, maybe we don't have a great defensive shortstop, but we're about to get the best, defensive third baseman in the history of the game. So, but yeah, it would be shocked if the Dodgers don't add some bullpen help, probably add a starter, and then maybe another bat or two.
Yeah, no, I think all of that makes sense with the Dodgers, and that's going to be the tough part about figuring out this playing time. And I'd be careful, rushing out to get Rosario or Kike Hernandez, even in like an NL only situation, because they could be ousted or mitigated further by the playing time if they bring in some other bats there. So we
the hard part is if they had any other bats, James Outman's out of a job. He is the only guy on their 26-man roster, only offensive guy on the 26-man roster, other than Will Smith, that has an option left. Everybody else are out of options. So they had anybody, and James Outman's out of a job. So, they had a third baseman like Arenado, and they're going to shift things around with, Taylor and Rosario.
He's hitting too well. He's hitting too well to move off of him right now. He's back on track.
Are they going to add another bench guy? Who are they going to DFA?
Either include somebody,
they DFA Peralta,
or something like a Peralta. Hayward I think is going to stick, but Peralta and Hayward are kind of redundant, aren't they? In fact, and Hayward's so much better because he's a good defender.
Yeah.
And Peralta's at 97 WRC plus. I think he either gets thrown back in a deal, even if it's to a crappy team where he can just kind of play out the string against righties, or they DFA him. There's no way. Here's what I'll go on record saying. Barring a complete collapse, and actually, no, I'm not even gonna. I don't even have to caveat it. There's no chance that James Outman's gonna lose his job. There's no chance. He's on fire again right now. He looks exactly like he did in April, and yeah, he was dreadful in May and June. 552 and 551 WRC plus or OPSs. They're absolutely awful. His strikeouts really got to him, but he's back on track with a 940 this month. 3 homers, 3 steals. It has to be Peralta or Hayward. Hayward's a way better defender. Ergo, it's Peralta.
Yeah, it's
for
Peralta.
The next move they
All right, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
David Robertson and Jorge Lopez to Miami. Will either of them close?
I think David Robertson's going to close. I mean, I don't think you not only make that trade, but the Marlins are taking on the rest of that contract, and that's not a small contract. He's going to pay $10 million this year. There's $3.5 million left on the deal, and so for a team like the Marlins who really spends money, I think you put him straight into the 9th inning. I think AJ Puck and Tanner Scott go back to being kind of middle relievers. It's a bummer for my main event team where I'm going to be probably having to drop AJ Puck this weekend. So, but I think Robertson's a guy. I think the question becomes, do the Mets now trade Adam Ottavino?
Yeah.
Because Brooks Raley got the save yesterday.
Yep.
So
we'll see. I think you're dead on there asking the follow-up question about what the Mets continue to do, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let me look real quick here what the situation was in that 9th there. It was McNeil, Mendick, Vargas. Who's Vargas? Vargas hit for Luis Garcia, who's also a lefty. So that's left, right, left. Oh, no, excuse me. McNeil, I said McNeil. He was playing right field. I'm an idiot. It was Garrett, Vargas, Abrams. I also said Mendick, who's also on the Mets. I'm a dumbass. Garrett, Vargas, Abrams. Stone Garrett, lefty destroyer. So that's interesting that they opened up Raley there. I still don't know who Vargas is. And then CJ Abrams, he's a lefty, right?
Let's see. So Abrams is a lefty. Said Stone Garrett and Ildemaro Vargas is a switch hitter.
Oh, Ildemaro Vargas. That's right. Yeah. Switch hitter. So he switch hit for left-handed Garcia. So it was going to be right, left. And that's why I think Raley got in. But to your point, Ottavino could turn around and be flipped. And then Raley is kind of the main guy, even if it is right-handers, I think, right? So,
I'd be really surprised if Ottavino was on this roster.
Well, should Raley even be then? He's 35.
No, I don't think he should be either. So, I mean,
so if you're going deep specking, where are you going on the Mets closer?
So
Drew Smith or something?
I guess maybe Dominic Leone, Trevor Gott, like,
bro, stop it.
I mean, who knows?
What is this bullpen, dude? No wonder this team sucks.
Yeah, I mean, another opportunity to play reliever
I was just about to
say,
especially when you said Drew Smith. I'm like, shut up. Tell me he's not in Arizona's 9th district.
Who the hell is Grant Hartwig? I mean,
no, Grant Hart. Okay, how dare you? How dare you? The education reforms that he got through in that district, and you're gonna besmirch that? Like, yeah, it wasn't a lot, but it was like 75% free lunch instead of the full 100%.
After the deadline and guys get moved around and stuff like
we
that,
have to.
We are playing. It's probably not.
You should have saved Grant Hartwig, dude. You should have saved that one. That's a winner right there.
We are 100% next Friday playing congressman or reliever
or middle reliever. I love it. I can't wait. So originally I thought maybe Lopez could steal that job, but then as soon as they bring Robertson in right behind him, I think it is going to be Robertson. And then the Mets backfill right now is going to be Ottavino Rayleigh, but wait for that dust to settle. Don't go spending all your budget this week and then watch them get traded on Monday or Tuesday. So be careful going too aggro for that. What about for Robertson then? What kind of money are you putting down on him if you're saves, Jason? You mentioned you have Puck. You're going to turn around and go for Robertson and give the exact bid so that your league mates can know what you're going to do.
I can't imagine he's available anywhere. He's been closing.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. He's been closing for the... Yeah. Sorry, I'm an idiot. He's been closing for the Mets. I am a little bit out of the closers loop because I've been blessed to not need them this year. And I don't say that as a flex because the baseball gods will tear me down in no time and fucking trade Hader into a middle relief situation or something. But I am a little out of tune with some of those fringier guys.
I'm actually in a very similar position where, like, I've actually been sitting a closer or two in some leagues. Because
that's right. You told me about the one where you had a bunch.
Yeah, and in my main event, for instance, like, I'm pretty much at the top of the standings in saves, and wins and strikeouts are really, really bunched together. So, like, I dropped from 2nd to 5th this week, and it's mostly because I had just an atrocious pitching day on Wednesday. But I mean, like, so like losing Puck is actually a blessing in disguise because he was a guy I couldn't really drop, and now I get to add an offensive piece via FAB to kind of help out because I've got a couple guys on the IL there.
It's always nice when that comes together. You're like, the exact reason that you can't give up that guy, I totally get it. You're like, I can't put this back in the pool in case he becomes the full closer again. Yeah. And now you don't have to worry about that nearly as much. Last trade before we get into some 3-up, 3-down, Carlos Santana over to Milwaukee. I bring up this trade. It's not going to have a whole lot of impact on his value. I'll let you say what you think about it here in a moment. But I wanted to bring up this trade because trades like this are interesting just in the general analysis of trades. And what I mean by that is don't always judge what the team is getting and that's it, and just say, oh, they just got a 99 WRC plus. Who cares? Some run-of-the-mill guy. Also judge what they're going from. They're starting Owen Miller every day with an 84 WRC plus. So going from Santana to Miller, that's a 15-point jump. So this actually is an impactful move, especially with Rowdy Tellez out for the Brewers. I think the Santana pickup is a nice little supplemental move for them. Doesn't change a whole lot about how I feel with regards to Santana. I still think he's kind of like a streamer in 15-teamers, but he could catch a heater in Milwaukee and go off. It's certainly a park improvement. What do you think of Santana over in Milwaukee, as well as the idea of analyzing not just what the team is getting, but what they're going from to determine whether or not a trade is actually useful?
Well, and I think too, like, to your point, what has been one of the biggest issues for the Brewers this year?
Hitting?
Well,
just in general?
Hitting lefties. And
yeah, Santana, because they have a lot of lefties.
Santana's a career 275 hitter versus lefties. Now, he's only hitting 239 against them this year, but, like, he's better against lefties traditionally than he is against righties. And so, I mean, I don't know that he's playing every day, but maybe he weak side platoons it, especially if and when Tellez gets back. Mm-hmm. And he didn't cost very much. Like, he's pretty much free. So
exactly.
And the Brewers always are going to try to do things cheaply. Now, I think they should make a real fucking push for it because,
I think so too.
who knows how long this window's open for them, but they're not. They're gonna do things as cheaply as
They
possible.
always play cheap. You're dead right. They should be going out trying to get like a big hitter.
They should be doing what they did with Sabathia a few years ago, which is like go and get guys that are going to make massive impact for the team. They're not going to. They're just going to make these kind of ancillary moves and hope that it all comes together and that their pitching can take them in, far into the playoffs. But
who's a big bat you'd like to see them get? If you could put any bat on their team, like they got Andrew Monasterio over at third.
Yeah.
Actually, interestingly enough, they still have Owen Miller in the lineup right now. He's penciled in at DH. I think Tyrone Taylor will get some of that burn, but he's not even out of the lineup every day yet. He's just further down the lineup with the arrival of Santana. I think the outfield's covered with Yelich, Frelick, and Weimer. I don't think you're making a huge upgrade there. So I think it would be an infielder or like a DH. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot with this, but is there a hitter that you would like to see Milwaukee chase and be like, hey, that's what I want to see y'all do? You guys got to go bigger.
The guy that I would love to see them go get is never going to happen because not only is he expensive, he's in the division. It's Arenado.
Arenado? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Arenado is the guy they should be going after. But like a more realistic target, I'm trying to think of like who the sellers are that have a big bat.
That have offense, yeah.
That isn't in division necessarily. Let's see. The White Sox could be selling.
But they have mostly pitching.
And outfield.
Yeah. Oakland doesn't have anybody. Washington, Jamer Candelario, but I
think Candelario makes a lot of sense. Like
he does, depending on what Brian Anderson's timetable is. Because if Brian Anderson comes back, aren't he and Candelario pretty similar?
Yeah, but Anderson can play a number of different spots.
He can go in the outfield too. Yeah, and he can play some first. So they don't necessarily cancel. Like it doesn't cancel out Anderson. They could bring in a Candelario and then still use Anderson when he comes back. Anybody else from the Cards? I know the Card. It's in division, but I'm thinking of their pitchers and Arenado. And they have outfield.
Like
Goldschmidt would be. Oh my God! Could you imagine?
And you
talk about hitting lefties for Milwaukee, and you get Goldie. Oh my God, that would be crazy. Let's do a little 3 up, 3 down. And since we're talking Milwaukee, this is kind of a perfect transition into it because Christian Yelich is our first guy on the 3 up side, and he's been wonderful. He's having a great.
Before we move on, just real quick, I checked the closer charts over on reliever recon. They think Trevor Gott would be the stealth option if Ottavino and Rayleigh gets traded.
Perfect. So there you go.
That's the guy to, I guess, take a dart on.
Throw a buck or two on him and hope that Ottavino, Rayleigh get moved while everyone else is putting all their money on those guys. You get Trevor Gott for a bone. Reliever Recon, the best one's doing it as far as a reliever work there.
$5 a month.
$5.
Well worth
if you're a saves chaser, you're out there always trying to play that saves game, you like doing that, this $5 will make your life exponentially easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Promise. Patreon of Reliever Recon. That's RECON, Reliever Recon. So amazing. Let's do 3 up, 3 down. Christian Yelich. 6 homers, 5 steals, 344 average, and a 175 WRC plus in his last 30. His overall numbers are wonderful, too. He's having a brilliant season. He's not back to 18-19, but that's always going to be his peak, right? It was juice ball era, playing his best baseball at ages 26, 27. I mean, 27, he was guaranteed to play his best baseball because that's a magic age. But now 31, he's bounced back to a superstar level again. 132 WRC plus on the year, 15 homers, 22 steals, blazing hot of late. Obviously, there's nothing actionable in terms of go pick up Christian Yelich. He's not available anywhere. But how have you found his return to prominence this year? And what do you think it does for Yelich going forward next year at age 32? Is he moving up in the draft?
I think he's just one of those guys that's underrated. I think people remember the player he once was in terms of first, second overall pick in fantasy. And they're like, oh, he's not that anymore, so he's a bum. He just got completely overlooked last years in fantasy. He's the number 6 outfielder on the player radar over in the Razzball player radar this year. He has been absolute money. And you look at what he's done this year with 15 home runs in 22 stolen bases and a 290 batting average. he has just been unbelievably good. And then, like, if you add in the fact that, hey, over 10% walk rate, an 11% walk rate again this year in OBP leagues, he's even a bigger monster. So
he's been incredible.
He's actually a guy that I said about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago. I did like a buy low, my usual buy low article.
Yeah.
And I said, I know he's hitting fine, but like I think you can still buy lower than he's actually valued at.
Yeah, because Yelich's reputation isn't where it needs to be.
I think
right
a lot
now.
of people wanted to sell high on him, and I think if you bought, like you're feeling pretty damn good about.
That's a buy high.
Yeah.
So Yelich was a pick 117 on average in the main event last year, the 53 main events. Let's say he kind of keeps just going on more or less this pace, maybe a little bit off of it. Nothing too crazy, but he kind of gets to the finish line with, say, 128 WRC plus and the requisite homers and steals that would be there. How high is he moving up next year relative to the 117 spot that Yelich went this year? You think he's in the top 100 next year?
Yeah, probably, but I think he's just inside of it. I think, when you add in where the pitching is going to go, because I think pitching prices were a little depressed this year.
Yeah.
Where closers are going to go, I think he will still be just inside the top 100. I think he definitely should move up, but I don't think he's going to move up so much. And I think also he's 31. He's got a history of back issues,
True.
So I think there are always going to be people who are like, he's kind of just off my board because I don't trust a 32-year-old with, long history of back issues. So
if he goes low 20s, low 30s on the homers and steals, Yelich, hitting 280, 285, and people are letting me get him at the back end of the top 100, he's going to be on every team I have.
He's going to go 20-30 this year. Like,
That's what I'm saying. He's pacing for 25-36. I shaved a little bit off for some, just to build in some cushion.
Yeah, so, an IL stint for, whatever, but like
so if I'm getting 20-30 at pick 80, again, he's going to be on every team. I'm wondering if maybe he goes higher.
If the question becomes, if he's a fourth rounder, so top 60 pick, are you still drafting?
Absolutely.
Where he's going?
Yes.
I think it becomes a lot more difficult of a conversation.
Adolis Garcia went 65 this year.
And has been well worth it. Because Adolis Garcia is like the number 5, or number 4 fielder. So
he has been worth it. I'm not trying to take a dub on him. Obviously, I'm taking a fat L. He has 6 steals, though. He's only worth it because he has 84 steals, or 84 ribbies, which leads baseball. And so, yes, you still get the high marks for that. But it's
hard
the
to
old
steal when you're jogging around the bases.
Sure, but it's the old like showing your work when we were learning math. If you didn't show the work properly, the answer didn't get full credit.
Which is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I do math in my head. Is like the thing I hated the most in school was getting marked down because I didn't show my work. I was well, how do I know you didn't cheat? Because I was the first person done with the fucking test. That's how. I walked out 15 minutes before everybody. Make them show their work.
Make them show their work. That's fair.
You should be grateful I didn't show my work because then you knew no one else was copying me because they showed theirs.
Serious question, though, about Adolis Garcia. You only have 6 steals. You got him for power and speed. Yet you have the 4th outfielder in baseball. So do you get slapped across the face if you start bitching and moaning about the returns? Or do you have a valid beef that, like, yeah, I appreciate all these ribbies.
Deals have been much easier to get this year. So
okay, I'm just asking the question, by the way. I wasn't anywhere near Adolis. Like I said, I take a fat L on him.
I didn't get him anywhere. Like I wasn't taking him where he was going, but he wasn't a guy who was off my board necessarily.
So here's my point, though. Adolis Garcia put 27-25 last year with a 250 average. Dog shit plate skills going into his age 30 season. This is why I was not in on him.
Yeah.
Yelich, exponentially better plate skills. Age 32 with some injury risk, sure. But a 20-30 season. Why would you be more why did you like Adolis at 65 this year, but you would balk at that with Yelich at 65? He's a better player doing the same thing.
I wasn't thinking Adolis. I didn't end up with him anywhere. I had him below where the market did, and I'll end up being wrong. And so but I was much more likely to end up with Christian Yelich, and I did end up with Christian Yelich in a number of leagues. because the discount was just too great.
Yeah,
Like, you
but
know,
so the discount's getting wiped. A much better version of this then at this price point. I mean, the other outfielders that are going up here, Schwarber at 60, Adelise at 65, Teoscar at 70, and George Springer 73. You're putting a Yelich in that range if he's even, Cedric Mullins at 55, even if Yelich is up at that area. I don't really have any problems with it.
shout out to Adelise Garcia, who completely changed his underlying
shut the fuck up.
Though. I
No.
mean, like,
and honestly, that's why I lose. By the way, because I didn't see that coming.
No,
and,
he lessened his O swing by 8%.
Yeah,
he raised his zone contact by almost 4%. His swing strike rate is down 3.5%. Like,
that's huge.
He made himself a better hitter.
He did,
and I think what we missed on, not necessarily. I don't think you could have predicted this because he had been kind of, but what we didn't give credit for is hey, he's just a really good athlete and he can make improvements. And
there was no reason to believe that he can make improvements though. A 30% K rate with a 5-6% walk rate, that's a bad profile. It always has been. And at age 30, there's no reason. And listen, the Adelise lovers that are laughing in my face about being wrong are gonna be like, you're just trying to justify. I'm not just justifying. I'll eat the L, but the explanation, the strategy remains sound. Don't bet on 30-year-olds with terrible plate skills, even with power and speed. This worked, but he improved. But I don't think his believers saw the improvement. They saw 25 steals and 27 homers last year and said, "Ooh, I'm going to buy that."
Because they knew
with great defense that will keep his playing time. But sub 300 OBPs at age 30, they don't improve. And he did up to 333 this year. And hey, hats off to you, Adelise. But I don't think that the process here is wrong to fade bad plate skilled 30-year-olds. So I'm going to continue to do that. But anyway, with Yelich, if he's up in that Adelise Garcia range next year, I'm going to feel that that's a bit of a discount. I feel like if he continues on the path that Yelich has had this year, he should be a top 40. So anything out of that, I'm taking that.
Okay.
He should be. If he goes 20-30, he should be top 40. If he's not, and he's more Cedric Mullins, pick 55, or Adelise Garcia, pick 65, then Yelich is going to be on a ton of my teams next year.
Yeah.
Let's talk Jarren Duran, a little bit younger version here. Not of Yelich, actually a little bit younger version of Adelise Garcia, I would say, in a way, right? Where he has some rough plate skills, but he has some pop, ton of speed this year, 6 homers, 21 steals. So he's kind of a reverse of Adelise's numbers this year. But I'm just talking in terms of terrible plate skills, 25% K, 7% walk. But he's riding a crazy BABIP. It's still up at 407. Part of it is his speed. Jarren Duran's speed does influence his BABIP positively. So it's not just pure luck. But 407 is so difficult. It's very rare that anybody can maintain a 400 for an entire year, let alone beyond that. What have you seen from Duran in these 81 games? Obviously, you can do the lazy double up and say 1242 is his full season pace, but we don't believe that because we don't believe another half season would include a 407 BABIP. So what do you do with Duran? Are you believing in him, 26-year-old out of Boston?
Oh man, this is really, really tough. Because I mean, one of the issues with Duran in the past is he's swung and missed so darn much. But he's shown elite plate skills this year, and I'm really I mean, he completely kind of changed over what he had done previously in the major leagues. 91% zone contact in the year. If you just go from the end of June 24th was the random date that I picked, 96% zone contact.
Dang. I mean, that almost fits. I'm looking last 30. That's why Duran's on here. 3 homers, 7 steals, 388 average, 205 WRC plus in the last 30 with that 96% zone contact for Jarren Duran. He was at 88 last year. Now, here's the interesting thing. You talk about his core plate skills improving. It's only yielded a 3-point dip in K rate down to 25%, and then the walk rate's only up a half point, which is nothing, from 6.3 to 6.8. So basically from 6 to 7. We'll be gracious here and give him that. So why isn't it manifesting in better results. I mean, a 3% strikeout improvement is okay for Jarren Duran, but is he just getting the BABIP from these improved plate skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, I mean, he still puts the ball on the ground like 43% of the time. And so he's got a 30% fly ball rate. Like, it's just a lot of contact on the ground. Which
that helps with BABIP.
Yeah, he's fast enough. And when you're hitting the ball on the ground, talked about this before, it goes harder. Like, it goes faster. Like, it's harder contact. Like, when we see these guys who have, high exit velocities, but they just need to raise their launch angle. Well, like, you don't get to keep all of that exit velocity.
Very rarely, yeah.
When you raise it, unless you're Vlad Guerrero Jr., right? Like, So, like, I think Duran will probably continue to be kind of what he's been, which is a pretty valuable commodity in fantasy, right? Like, he's a guy who's going to get on base and hit for a good batting average because he can outrun a lot of the ground balls that he has. There's also going to be slumps, right? Like, he's going to go through periods in which those ground balls are finding gloves and not finding holes. So,
hasn't gone through that yet, but he will.
Yeah,
will he get to, will Jarren Duran get to the finish line before that happens, though, right? We see that sometimes with these BABIP surgers is that they do kind of hold it for a year, and he wouldn't even have to do it all year, right? He has 81 games thus far with 2 more months on the books. Okay, let's put some numbers to it then. The projections have Jarren Duran for 4 homers and 9 steals the rest of the way with a 260-something average, which is pretty solid. Do you think he can reach, beat, or exceed that, Jarren Duran?
Say what the line is again.
4 homers, 9 steals, and a 260-something average.
I think he could probably. I think he can beat the stolen bases on that. Like, I mean, I think he's a guy that could easily steal 15 plus rest of the way if he, if things break right for him. I'm just trying to see if I can find his ex BABIP. Like, what is his deserved BABIP? Where is that on Savant?
That I don't know. I didn't know they did X BABIP.
Someplace does X BABIP.
That makes sense.
Maybe Pitcherlist does it.
Now, I would say you look at Duran and you see the improved hard hit rate, as you mentioned, 46%, up 9 points. And with the ground ball, although his ground ball rate's actually down from 51 to 44, but line drives are up too. So a lot of BABIP fueled, a lot of good ways to generate a high BABIP with the harder hits, with the ground balls and line drives. So you see how he's getting to such a gaudy number. It's just that you never predict anybody to hold a 400 type number.
No, I mean, I think, like, best case scenario, he's like a 350 BABIP rest of the way, probably closer to 340. So the batting average is going to tick down. Like, he's probably going to be like a 270 hitter rest of the way, but a 270 hitter with a handful of home runs and double-digit stolen bases rest of the way is really, really valuable. And in Boston, at worst, they're going to, like, send away outfielders. So Duran's going to get to play. Like, I mean, there's no world in which Duran loses playing time kind of rest of the way. So, I mean, if someone wants to sell high on him, like, I'm okay buying high. Like, that's not an issue for me.
If I need the speed in particular, I think I'm inclined to
I was just a year early on him, unfortunately.
Yeah, you liked him last year? I didn't.
Yeah, I drafted him in a bunch of leagues, like, right at the end, and just didn't pan out. But, whatever. Next year I'll be back in on him.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm all about being chronically a year early. That used to be like one of my favorite things to do. Last of our 3 up here, Willi Castro. Now you were talking about some steals. How many steals does Willi Castro have?
14.
25.
Wow.
That's insane. Only 13 games played. No, I'm just kidding. But he doesn't play that much is the joke I'm trying to make here with Willi Castro. To this point, how many ribbies does Willi Castro have?
14.
22.
So fucking close.
22 and 25 steals. He's 25 for 29 on the bases. He's got, he got some playing time because there were some injuries. Now he's not playing nearly as much, but he's still getting the SBs. is this that Rajay Davis from many moons ago, Jared Dyson, maybe even like John Birdie of this year? That's not quite as high. He's not leading the league, but is Willi Castro this year's John Birdie, where we need to be looking at him a bit more because he's got some availability. Once they got healthy, he got some availability, but he's back playing. He himself was out for a little bit, and now he's played each of the last 3 days. What do you think of Willi Castro, and should he be rostered more with his 25 steals in just 12 games? Again, I want people to know that I'm joking about that. He's played plenty of games, but he's been high impact in small volume. What do you think of Willi Castro?
I mean, it kind of depends on what the Twins do at the deadline. Are the Twins going to add a third baseman? Like, they could be a buyer on Candelario, right? So True. I think it really depends on what happens, this
Castro
weekend.
Castro a good defender? Sorry,
I don't think so. I think he's I think he's more of like a not great anywhere, but can play a bunch of different spots.
I think that's the kind of utility. I think he was better in the outfield, if I recall, from when he was with the Tigers.
Did he play a bunch of outfield? I don't remember him playing outfield with the Tigers.
Maybe I'm recalling. I might be thinking of Victor Reyes if I'm being
100% honest. I think he played mostly second and third.
I don't recall him being a very good shortstop. He was a shortstop prospect coming up. No, he played the outfield. Yeah, my old brain still works. Yeah. He played a bunch of left and right. He did play those middle infield positions that you're talking about, Willi Castro, but he did play a decent bit of outfield, including a ton of center field last year. I say a ton, 121 innings, but a decent chunk there. And then 207 in left, 312 in right. So he played all over the outfield last year for the Tigers. So anyway, Willi Castro.
To be quite honest, I didn't watch the Tigers very much last year.
Hey. You saved your brain. The punishment. Yeah, very nice. But so 25 steals, but a 244 average, 5 homers in 87 games. Sorry, I interrupted your earlier part there. Are you picking him up in 15s? There is some availability for Willi Castro.
I mean, if I need speed, you're probably not going to have to spend very much on him. So I would probably pick him up and know that there's a really good chance that next, the weekend after next, I'd be dropping him. So, if they do add a third baseman, that could be a problem for him.
It would absolutely be.
Knowing the Twins, that they're probably not going to add anything. They'll probably just go, hey, we can win this division without doing anything. I mean,
in fairness to them, they can.
They can. Yeah, they absolutely can. So,
do you like Willi anywhere else? 15s actually is not as available as I thought. My main event is actually a very rare one where he's available. 91% roster rate for Willi Castro. So the fact he's available.
Can you pick him up and trade him to me? Is that allowed?
I need those steals too, dude. I actually need to be looking at him this week. So what about in 12s where he's widely available? Does Willi Castro play enough? And say, for example, in Yahoo.
He hurts you too much in other categories.
Okay, so the steals just aren't worth it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then let's do 3 down here. And let's start with another guy who is supposed to be delivering some speed. And to be honest, he hasn't really been that bad. But I do want to talk some Daulton Varsho because it hasn't been great. It's 12 and 12, homers and steals, but a 213 average is really weighing Varsho down. Now, the interesting thing is, despite all of this, he's still the 12th ranked shortstop, 12th ranked catcher on the year. So in every format, even one catcher, and I would say even 10-team one catcher, even though he's not a top 10 guy, I still think he's perfectly viable as your catcher, Daulton Varsho. One of the questions becomes, though, spinning forward, what are we doing with him? Because he's not going to be catcher eligible next year. He hasn't played one game. It's done. And we knew this was coming. So he's pacing toward about 2020 or so. Is that enough with this dreadful 213 average? What can Varsho do to improve the average? Do you like his future outlooks to improve the average? And are you drafting him next year outfield only? Or do you think you'll move off of him once the catcher eligibility is gone? Daulton Varsho, struggling in the last 30, and that's why he's on 3 down, but also been a bit of a disappointment for the entire season. So what do you think about him?
I'm taking a look at kind of just some splits. He's been fine in terms of the underlying skills. He's got to be just getting extremely unlucky. So I want to see what his XBA is. The XBA is 225. Hitting the ball decently hard, but just not as hard as he did last season. Hitting the ball in the air, I'm really kind of surprised by this. He's
by the struggles.
Yeah, by how bad the struggles are. Like, there's a range of outcomes where even if you're like hitting the ball decently and stuff like that, that like, oh, yeah, 230 to 270 is your range of outcomes. So for him to be hitting, 210, like, is a little ridiculous, I think.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those guys that it'll be really interesting to see what his ADP is, because I think there are going to be some people who are like, he was only valuable as a catcher. I'm not eating that to 15 average. If that's the case and the market is so down on him, I think he'll be a really nice buyback opportunity. If there are a lot of people that just see the name value and go, hey, he was a second, third round pick last year, I'm gonna throw him back. I'm gonna still take him in the sixth. Then he's probably it'll probably be a little bit overrated. So I think it'll be really interesting to take a look at the early ADP and see where he ends up.
Yeah, I am really curious. It's gonna matter so much on how Varsho finishes, but I could see myself buying the dip a good bit, because 2020 in the outfield is still very good, and I don't believe he's a 213 hitter. So if he finishes around there, let's say it's more like a 220, right? He adds 7 points over the rest of the year, but he gets to the 2020 and his value just plummets, and we see Daulton Varsho going like outside the top 100, then he's another guy I'm going to have on a bunch of teams. I'm going to have Yelich and Varsho everywhere, because I don't believe that I don't think he's a 213 hitter. So if that depresses his price a ton, I'm going to be buying in. So we'll see how it goes. It's hard to say right now because we don't know how he's going to finish, but he will not have catcher. I think it would take like Jansen and Alejandro Kirk to be abducted to put him in at catcher for 20 games. It's just not going to happen. So let's talk Teoscar Hernandez, not his former teammate. In fact, he was gone by the time that Varsho got there. Former Blue Jay himself, though. 1 homer, 1 steal, 191 average, and a 56 WRC plus in the last 30 days. He's been pretty underwhelming overall on the season with just a 95 WRC plus, 16 homers, 5 steals. I wasn't the biggest fan of his coming into the year, going out to Seattle. I've always liked Teoscar as a player, but the plate skills with the worst park, everything setting up, I thought it was going to be a tougher season. Of course, I had Fraley and Will Myers ahead of him, and I got question marks on both. So give me 1 up, 1 down on that, because Fraley's been great, but Will Myers, comically awful. So I'll take my heat on that one. But Teoscar was somebody that I kind of faded and I'm a little bit nervous about. And with the 288 OBP, I'm feeling kind of justified there. Where are we at on Teoscar? He's 30 now. He does have bad plate skills. Have we already seen the best of him, and now comes the sharp decline? What do you think of Teoscar Hernandez?
I don't know about sharp decline. I mean, he still hits for power. I think the park hurts him. I wonder if he gets traded at the deadline, if the Mariners decide to be sellers. With the Angels adding all these pieces, are they afraid that they're pretty much done in the division? And maybe they try to retool for next year, and Teoscar is a part of kind of the retooling, kind of shipping him off, trying to recoup some value. So if he leaves Seattle, I mean, he's probably going to be in a better park, more than likely. So I don't know. Like, I don't think like the skills have deteriorated that much where I go, oh, like he's that big of a, like his zone contact's actually up from last year. The problem is he's just swinging more, and he's swinging outside the zone more. So I think, but I think that part of that is probably pressing. Like, he's in a new location, in a park that doesn't play well for power. He's trying to hit his way out of, an extended slump. I think he's going to turn into not what he was a few years ago when he was like, just a massive talent, but like, why can't he be a 265 hitter with a bunch of home runs? Like, I
because
think
he has bad plate skills and he's in a worse park. And he's
but I don't think he will be. He's got a 252 XBA. Like, he's getting unlucky. Like, it's his. I think this is a decent buy low, especially if he gets traded to a nice park.
Do you think he gets moved this year?
I think there's a chance.
You don't think they're buying?
I don't know. They're in 4th place in the division, and
yeah, but where's that put them in the wild card?
I think it probably puts them pretty far back.
4.5 back in the wild card. But now we are at that point where you have to also consider how many teams are in front of you. The game count matters, but then how many teams? It is 3 teams, but 4.5 is a literal nothing deficit at this point. I'd go so far as to say that like an 8-game deficit at this point is pretty much nothing. If you don't have like 8 teams in between you, and they have Boston Yankees and the Angels in front of them. Also, Yankees and Red Sox are deep in their division as well, and they're in the mix. So that's kind of interesting. That's because nobody in the Central besides the division winner is an actual contender, though. So it creates some extra space there. And listen, we've been pro Teoscar on this show quite a bit over the years, and you've carried that torch further as I've kind of faded from him.
It was all about the price. Like, you know,
Always.
when the price went up through the roof, like it, you know, I think we both were like, okay, we got our bonus, and now we're letting it go. So
now if it comes all the way back down, then I'll get into. I agree with that, and I'm always rooting for him. Like, it's one of those things where sometimes you're down on a guy, but you root for him, and like you'd be fine if you're wrong. If Teoscar would have come out and hit 35 this year, I'd have been like, sweet, I'll take that fat L. But I was nervous about him going to Seattle, and we'll see how it finishes up. But I can hear you with the extra, with the way he's hitting, giving him a better XBA than we're seeing. Okay, maybe there is a little bit more there. Nick Pratto, guy I am holding right now, but might be on the chopping block this week in my main event. Just didn't really have anybody to cut. I did that thing where I was going to cut him for like 3 exclusive players last week if I could get them. Didn't get any of them, so I just held him for one more week. But the problem with Nick Pratto right now is the strikeouts are off the charts. 2 homers, 0 steals, 178 average, and a 52 WRC plus in the last 30 days for Nick Pratto. The Ks are just kind of swallowing him up, and that's a big problem right now. I'm wondering if you're holding Nick Pratto even in 15-teamers. 38% K rate, 10% walk on the season, 93 WRC plus, and 7 homers. Is there even any 15-team viability for the 24-year-old first baseman?
So I went back to June 1st. Since June 1st, he is hitting 193, 273, 340 with 5 home runs and 0 stolen bases. He's hitting 199 with a 317 BABIP.
Jesus.
Like he's not getting unlucky. He deserves all. He's striking out at a 41% clip since June 1st.
You said that since June 1st. Do you want to know when I picked him up? June 4th.
Makes sense.
So now he's been on my bench for the overwhelming majority of that, so I didn't get stuck with all that. But I've gotten a decent bit of the recent run with Nick Pratto. Like I said, I am looking to replace him. Where's your outlook long term? Because remember, and I brought this up before, but it's been a while since Pasquantino's out now. But I always like to bring up, Pratto was the uber prospect over Pasquantino, and then they flipped. Obviously, Pasquantino's hurt now, so Pratto's found some PT. Does he still carry the prospect hype from last year, or have we adjusted down on Pratto?
I think we've adjusted down, and rightfully so. I think at this point, like, he needs to like show like continued ability to keep good plate skills. He hasn't been able to do that. And, you know, I mean, I think the only reason he's even playing is because Kansas City's so bad.
Pasquantino's out because of Pasquantino's injury, right?
Yeah, which is Kansas City's so bad. Like, even if Kansas City was competitive and Pasquantino's out, I mean, Prado's not playing. They would have brought in the Carlos Santana or someone.
No. He has a 94 OPS plus. I think he'd still be playing because he's 24. I think he'd still be playing. Depends how competitive. There's a world I can see what you're saying, but I think for the most part, they'd still be playing him because he's 24 and they want to see where he's at. But that he's definitely playing that way because they have nobody else and they're a dog shit team.
He had since June 1st. He has a 65 WRC plus.
I feel like you're picking on me. I feel like you know when I picked him up now, and you're still bringing up that period.
This is amazing. Yeah, this is what I have sorted.
Very, very mean of you to do that. The next week, though, I did pick up Yainer Diaz and I re-picked up Kerry Carpenter because he was coming back from injuries. So
those have worked out. Yeah,
I can feel good about those there as I beat myself up and then pick myself back up. Let's talk some interesting 2-steps next week and see where you're starting them, if anywhere. Our boy, he's back. I want to say this is very recent that we recently talked about Kyle Gibson. Was it in a 2-step or was it a 3 up, 3 down?
We wouldn't have talked about him any other way.
I don't think so. No, it was actually as a potential buy low starter at the beginning of the month.
And I think we probably both, I think you're right. And we both said no.
Yeah, because he had a 4.05 Sierra, but a 6.84 ERA. And we said no because of his extreme volatility, which still exists. And the difficult part about him, I write in the SP chart, so I go over guys day to day, 5 days a week. Gibson's volatility pisses me off.
Yeah.
He has at Toronto and home to the Mets next week. And in Kyle Gibson form, it's going to be 7 scoreless, 12 Ks at Toronto, and 14 earned against the Mets at home.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the shit that he always does. So he's impossible to time, and it's so frustrating. And our grass looks like shit out front right now because he's not watering it properly. That's a very deep joke for our longtime listeners. Are you starting Gibby anywhere at Toronto, home to the Mets?
I mean, I guess in 15, it's where you don't have very many options. I guess you can, but other than that, no.
No long shots in 12s?
No way.
Okay,
no,
I didn't think so.
Not at Toronto.
Then we don't need to go too deep on it. Then let's go to Ben Lively out in Cincinnati, who is kind of interesting. Remember him as a Philadelphia farmhand and kind of came up with them and did some things. Goes over to KBO for a few years. Looks to kind of establish himself a bit more. Comes back to Cincy. Doesn't really hit the radar until he starts putting a few things together. Now he's actually hitting some 15-team radars, definitely in the main event universe. Ben Lively at the Cubs, home to Washington. Is he starting to pique your interest in 15s, maybe even 12s? Where are you at on Ben Lively, the righty for the Cincinnati Reds at age 31?
Yeah, I mean, you could do worse. I think it's hard to want to start him at home, in that park because he does have a homer issue. But he's done a really good job of inducing a lot of weak contact, getting, out of innings when he gets in trouble. So I do think there's going to be blow-ups along the way. And, you're not, like, super afraid of Washington, but at Chicago might be a little bit scary. So
yeah,
I think this is one you can – I think it really depends on what the Cubs do, right? If the Cubs decide to sell, which doesn't seem like they will necessarily, then I could see starting him. But if the Cubs are full force, it's kind of a risky start. I think maybe Washington could be bad enough, especially if they sell pieces, as we expect them to do, that it's worth taking the gamble on Chicago to get the Washington start.
That's kind of where I come out with Lively, particularly in 15 teams. Although he's not as available in the main event, he's 96% rostered. So it really is 12-team pickup. I think Lively's a team streamer in 15s for sure.
Straight streamer in 10s and 12s.
Okay, perfect. You answered my question then. JP France, we've talked about him in the 2-start realm, and he continues to kind of keep himself relevant. Despite the modest skills output on the strikeout and walk rate, we keep coming back to him because the results are there. He gets Cleveland and a trip to the Yankees, which they might have Judge back, which would make that scary again. They've been completely non-scary without Judge. He alone would turn that into a little bit of a scare, but you're talking about JP France with 17% K, 7% walk is good, but 17% K and 9% swing and strike, those suck, Justin. But I see a 2.87 ERA and a 1.22 whip. Those don't go together, by the way. The whip says the ERA will come up. And decent win probability in Houston. Is that enough for you to go for JP France in 12s? Well, he's already on 15s.
And both Altuve and Jordan came back yesterday, so the win probability just went up. I think JP France is pretty close to a must start in 15s right now, and
definitely
a should start in 10s and 12s. Like I think, especially with this set of matchups, I know Judge could be back, but I'm not afraid of the Yankees right now. So I think France is probably a start in every format right now.
It's hard to get him out of the lineup. And again, I look at the whip against the ERA and I say the ERA is going to go up, 1.22 whip, 2.87 ERA. You could just look at the ERA indicators for that. But he's been pitching so well that I'm riding him if I've got him. I think in a 10, you might have a better rotation that you don't have to. But if you're scraping, then JP France could be your guy. Yep. Griffin Canning, I think you're going to eliminate him instantly as soon as I say the words at ATL.
Yeah, no
way.
I
just can't do it. And it's tough because you never get 2 steps with LA guys, but are you really even getting one here when it includes Atlanta?
And you may not, you still may not if the Angels add another starting pitcher. So,
also true. They could add another guy in and boot. By the way, I meant to bring this up with regards to Giolito. My boy Chase Silseth. He was back in. It was looking good. He didn't even get to make the start against Detroit because they got rained out, and so he gets punted instantly. Is he an auto cut, or are you holding Chase Silseth in 15s at all?
Okay. Yeah, he's an auto cut.
Okay, because if he can't, he's the 7th starter right now out of their 6. Edward Cabrera gets home against Philly and a trip to Texas. Texas is always scary, and that's why you eliminate him?
Yeah. I mean, and
Philly, his general control
Philly's
issues.
Starting to hit too, and then you add in his general issues, He's a
No,
buy.
I'm with that. I don't need to go any deeper than that. Edward Cabrera is terrifying to me. Jose Quintana gets to go to KC and Baltimore. Both parks are nice now these days, which is it's still so weird to say that about
Yeah.
Camden. My brain always double checks that. Like, are you sure you should be saying that in August, no less? But that is the case at KC, at Baltimore. Quintana's looked all right since coming back. I really liked what he did last year. I picked him up in the main, so I'm pretty bullish on this. So I'm going to say yes on these. But what do you think about Jose Quintana?
Yeah, the automatic no's for Atlanta and Texas, automatic yeses for Kansas City. That's
yes,
and Oakland. So
that's 100% where I'm at. I hinted at this guy earlier because we've talked about him at least 15 times. First off, how does he get so many damn two steps? Ranger Suárez, is he in a 3-man rotation? Because he's on the 2 steps every other week, it seems.
Yeah, like Ohtani is on the every 6th day. Suárez is on the every 3rd day.
Exactly.
We just haven't had a chance to talk about his 3 start weeks.
No, we haven't gotten those in, but he gets them every once in a while. If he starts on Monday, he goes Monday, Wednesday, Sunday. But it's funny how often we've brought him up because of this, but he's been right there in that mix of like, he's always a team streamer, at least in 15s, but he's kind of made himself 12-team streamer-ish. You've dealt with your own trials and tribulations at Miami home to KC. You already said KC is an automatic, so I know you're starting him. But what is your outlook on Suárez right now? Where's your confidence level? Because it was low, it's gone up. Has it come back down with some recent struggles, or where do you currently stand with Ranger?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of who he is as a guy who he's going to run hot, he's going to run cold, because he gives up so much contact. He's also going to hurt your whip. So I think, obviously you're starting him this week with Kansas City on the docket, but Miami's really good against left-handed pitching. So I would, if you have the ability to sit one and start the other in a daily moves lineup, I'm sitting against Miami, and then I'm starting
even in Miami.
Even in Miami.
Okay.
But if I have to take both or none, I'm taking both.
Yes, if it's both or none on Ranger Suárez, you got to go both at Miami home to KC. I think I like them at Miami a little bit more. He's just so frustrating because when you miss a great start from Ranger Suárez, you're like, dang it, dude, 7 scoreless with 8 Ks. That's so good. He's done that type of start a bunch of times this year. But when he has a bad one, it's like 5 1/3, 4 runs, 4 walks, 4 Ks.
It doesn't kill you.
No, it never. That's the beauty. At least this year, he doesn't have any just major duds.
It's not. It's not like he's giving up 7 earned runs in 3.
Thank God. So let's hope he doesn't do that this week with Miami and KC.
You can just skip the next one because he's not going to be on the Cardinals. So he's not.
I don't think so either. Jack Flaherty, Minnesota, Colorado. If he is, that's both at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's both at home, and you're in Colorado.
I agree with you, by the way, though, that he's not going to be.
No shot that Jack Flaherty is on the Cardinals come Tuesday. So
yeah, I'm with you. So I agree with that. So don't go picking him up just because of this 2-step. If you like Flaherty a bit the rest of the way, feel free. But unless he gets traded today or tomorrow, he might not be ready to get the 2-step. And so that could ruin your game plan there. Jon Gray, White Sox and Miami, both at home. He's been tumultuous of late. He's been a frustrating roster. I mean, pretty much for his career, right? Because he's pitched in Colorado for the bulk of it, which has been frustrating. And then even when he's gotten out of Colorado, he's pitched better as we had hoped and expected. But then health has been a problem with Texas. So I love Jon Gray. I always root for him. But he frustrates the hell out of me as a fantasy player. So what do you think about White Sox Miami for Jon Gray coming off a dreadful start at Houston?
I think unless you're win-seeking and you're just hoping that the Rangers are going to win like a 7-6 ball game, I'm probably being very cautious with starting Jon Gray in 10s and 12s. I think 15s probably don't have better options. Yeah. But in 10s and 12s, I don't think I would start unless I'm absolutely win-seeking right now.
Yep. I think we're in damn near lockstep on everything here. The only thing we had a little disagreement on is I like Ranger Suárez at Miami a little bit more than you. Other than that, we saw eye to eye here. So some interesting 2-steps out there to go get. I think you mentioned this at the outset, or was this offline, that you have to start playing more to your standings than your actual best players going in.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it offline, but it's really interesting looking, especially at Friday switches and then Monday lineups and stuff. Make sure you're playing your league standings, right? If you're in a roto league, right? I'm sitting really good hitters who don't steal bases for not very good hitters who do steal bases.
You'd be playing a Willi Castro over like a Kerry Carpenter.
Yep, absolutely.
Because you need those steals that
in
badly.
my main event, I'm pretty sure I'm like winning every hitting category except for stolen bases. And stolen bases, I can move up and move a lot of ground. So like, yeah, like I'm not starting Brandon Nimmo over Lars Nootbaar this week. And like I'm starting a bunch of, you know, speedster guys. I spent a lot of money on Sal Frelick hoping he can steal some bases.
I like him, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. So like be very in tune with your league standings, where you can gain ground and where you can lose ground.
Yes.
And where other people around you in the standings can gain and lose ground. So,
and do not forget the rate stats. Our buddy Todd Zola has been on this for years now. That's before I first really heard it being analyzed and written about. Not to forget about the rate stats. The only metrics where people can come back to you. That is very important. When people write off their batting average or their ERA and they start to see a move, but they see it too late and they're like, I could have been adding here because teams were coming back to me. Do not give up on your rate categories. Obviously, there's certain times, you know, if you're 28 points of batting average away from gaining a single point, then okay, yeah, you're in some trouble there. But too often, people make assessments about rate stats that are just wholly incorrect. And so it can be difficult to analyze because people can go up and down, but just don't forget those categories. And you do need to start playing your categories. And another warning that we always give, more and more people are going to start going into football, and that will create opportunities for your bids and for your standings will get softer because people won't be playing as hard as they are in the bottom of leagues, and that just happens.
To your point, in my main event, I was in second place earlier this week. I'm now in fifth place because I've lost 7 points in rate stats in one day. I lost
my God!
4 points on ERA.
Tell them
3 points.
Tell them about the 3 starts.
I had 6 starters go in 3 games on Wednesday.
Guaranteed to get at least 1 win, right? Like, because you got 6 starters in 3 games.
Of course, I was.
You get at least 1.
Instead, I got 27 innings of a 9 ERA and like a 2 WHIP or something like that, and 0 wins. I got some strikeouts at least, but it was pretty fucking brutal. So
that's a nightmare, dude.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, just the rate stats, you can move a lot in ERA and WHIP, and I don't think people are willing to sit down and do the math on that.
Well, it's hard too because you don't know what your opponents are going to get. So really, the best strategy is to just not give up on those because you don't know. Now, you will maybe get to a certain point where your ratios look pretty good, but your wins aren't. So you do have to kind of sacrifice those a little bit. That's a strategy. Our main point here is saying don't ignore them saying, oh, I can't fix my rates. At least make sure you know exactly where you stand right now because things can change there. So
absolutely,
we got a stretch run. It's going to be 2+ months. There's going to be a lot that changes. You guys are all, there's going to be people with stories of I was 18 points back and I won my league, or I had a lead and this, so much is still going to happen. So stick with it. Even if you play fantasy football, if you're competing, make sure you're paying attention to your baseball leagues. Anyway, absolutely. Justin, what's going on for Sunday? You guys getting together?
I believe we are, but I got to double check with Jason.
Okay. And then Nick Pollock and I are going to have a trade deadline show this week. I know you're going to be on with Joe Arrico doing his show as well, but maybe we could steal you for a few minutes for ours.
I think I'm going to try to jump into a bunch of different, my kid's going to go to daycare that day, and I think Tout War's going to do a stream, Joe Arrico's doing a stream, you guys are doing a stream. I think I'm just going to jump into a crap ton of live streams on Tuesday.
We'd love 10, 15 minutes with you for
absolutely,
sure.
Yeah.
Especially if your Giants are making moves, but even if not, we just want to talk to you. So
they're going to do exactly what they've done the last few years, which is stand pat, maybe make an ancillary move here or there.
You don't think their recent struggles are going to prompt some? Well, never mind. They're still the top wild card. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, they're still the top wild card.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 4 games back of the Dodgers. Like, they're right there.
Do they buy then?
No, I think they do exact what they've done the last few years.
Perfect
they
middle.
Literally stand pat. Like maybe they add a depth piece. Yeah, they're doing exactly what I want them to be, really good or really bad. Don't be the middle team. Like either sell all the pieces or buy
something big and replace Brett freaking Wisely. Who the hell's that?
Exactly. Like
that could have been a good one for your.
They're not gonna do anything.
Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, if they have to make a move, then you'll be great for that. But even if not, we'll have you on for sure. Good luck on Sunday, and I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.